And we are live. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm one of your co-hosts, Blake Ruffino, joined by my counterpart and co-host, Joe DeLeone. Good evening. Good sir. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to talk some ball with you today. I know that I don't know why, and I hate trying to downplay a week of football because we still get to watch football this week. But I feel like week 12 could have been so much more exciting than it currently actually is. So many teams have underwhelmed and just did not live up to expectation. But there's still some make or break opportunities here, especially with this Georgia game.
Joe, I'm just going to tell you, every time we think like that as college football fans, somebody gets knocked off.
And I wonder who that's going to be.
Texas. And then all of a sudden, okay, you're like,
oh. What about Ohio State? Northwestern's a tough out.
Okay, calm down. Calm down. But I went through a list of games for this week, and we're going to talk about some of them. Utah and Colorado, Oregon, Wisconsin, Texas, Arkansas, Georgia, Tennessee. But, Joe, I look at Pittsburgh and Clemson. Clemson, I understand what you're saying about Clemson, and everybody's like, okay, Clemson's not technically out of it, neither is Pitt. So we got to continue to watch and admire and look at these games. Also, I look at SMU. It's a lot of SEC. But I look at Boston College. Can they knock off SMU, who's atop the ACC right now? So here's the ironic thing. I'm with you. There's a lot to be shaken out in the ACC this week that we might be like, oh, well, down goes SMU.
So I was just about to pitch you. I was about to pitch you two upsets. One of them, I think that the SMU game could be sneaky. I don't think that they've gone, and I don't know what Castellanos' health situation is because he's been in and out of the lineup. I think he's fine because he started last game. If there's like a sneaky out of nowhere upset that we're going, oh my God, Boston College is the game, especially because their defense is so underrated. The other one, I don't think this one's super likely because it's at home for BYU. But Kansas, man, Kansas has lost a lot of close football games this year, and they came out and fought against Iowa State. And look at them, the amount of points that they put up. If there's a random game that that one's the one you wake up in the morning and you're like, huh? Kansas beat BYU? What the hell happened?
Well, and obviously people probably think Colorado will go down this week, so there's that. No. Need to throw this out there. South Carolina and Missouri is the sneaky game in college football this week.
Yeah.
It's a sneaky college football game this week. That game going to be at 3:15 on the SEC network. So, man, could you imagine if Shane Beamer gets to 9-3?
I don't want to acknowledge the possibility of that reality after my desire for him to be on the hot seat that I pointed out in the offseason is not coming to fruition. But I'll say this, though, that game being sneaky, I'm going to slightly push back because actually I think that game's going to be a blowout. I think South Carolina at home, 4:15 kick. And I don't know if Brady Cook's coming back, but Drew Pine, man, should not be a starting quarterback in the SEC. I have no idea why he's still playing. He was enrolled in classes at Notre Dame last spring. But that game could be a blowout, which we'll probably get to tomorrow when we do our Tuesday breakdowns.
Yeah, and there are other games in college football here. I mean, there are some decent ones when you look at them, but non-ranked on ranked matchups. Joe, I got to say this. UCLA, to have 4 wins with the decimation that they've gone through, Coach Foster, Eric Bieniemy, it's not missed upon me what you have done in the Big Ten. So if he can start recruiting a little bit here, Joe, I see the foundational pieces out there in Los Angeles. So gonna keep my eye on UCLA because it's not like that they have not played a very, very tough schedule because they have.
Yeah. A lot of travel.
Lots and lots of travel as well. Can Tulane start sneaking themselves into this Boise State conversation? They're 6-0 in the American. So a lot of things that will shake out, just not the bigger matchups here. All right, Joe, let's get to it. Did you see the news, by the way, before we get rolling? So Nebraska makes a change, Joe, at OC. Dana Holgerson going to be calling plays. Your thoughts on Nebraska making a change and Holgerson being the new OC?
Yeah, I think that it was something that was necessary to happen. I think that it's very odd that we're in this version of football where an analyst can join the staff mid-season, and he was very recently on the TCU staff as an analyst too in the same year, and then all of a sudden he's the play caller. This is very similar to what happened with Pat Shurmur, where he took over for Colorado last year. Not an exact comparison, but somewhat similar for where he goes from analyst to the play caller, now the offensive coordinator. I still don't think Pat Shurmur's a great play caller. I will save that conversation for a later day. Holgerson's he's a brilliant mind. He is a brilliant offensive mind. The production that we've seen from Holgerson from a number of quarterbacks throughout his coaching career, it's been tremendous. Look at all the guys that were productive at West Virginia. Look at some of the quarterbacks that were productive when he was there at Houston. I'd have pretty high expectations that this pans out and works out pretty well. I'm surprised that nobody hired him as an OC during the offseason and that this is the path that he's taking.
He got looks at big programs.
Okay.
I know of one very specifically that he gave a look to, but I don't think that university was going to go in that full direction yet. But he didn't want to take an analyst role full time. So regardless, I get what you're saying on that. Here's my thing. I don't like the identity change offensively. Because you wanted to be ground and pound. You wanted to be a tough physical football team. And I know that you're trying to change some things up for Raiola here. Joe, you can't – I don't like in-season identity changes, right? Like if this is just for now because you need to get some things going, maybe Holgerson calls plays and uses the lingo that Nebraska has already been using. But I don't like the identity change. Now, you can make a counter argument and then say, well, we need an identity change. Okay, we got to come up to the 21st century. I don't know, Joe. I don't know. I don't like these in-season adjustments like this. I don't. If anybody, however, I think if anybody can overcome it, it would be a former head coach, regardless of who that head coach is. So I say all that to say it's not like Dana hasn't been in the business a long time. It's not like he hasn't been in this game a long time. He knows the air raid in and out. So I just don't – I just don't know if I like the identity change.
To talk about what you just mentioned here, one, I understand where you're coming from because there is truth to that. Doing that during the season, trying to make this total shift, and we don't know for certain if it's just immediately air raid. The Matt Rule, the way that he talked about it was saying that Dana is going to help heighten the strengths of this roster. Maybe it is a little bit more run-centric as they start to open up the passing attack and be a little bit more creative with finding yards for Dylan Raiola to produce. But two things why I think that this situation is unique. One, you just mentioned there, you have a head coach who's taking over this. This isn't a guy who – it's not like we're making a swap and promoting a young tight ends coach to make the jump up because you thought that he was the next coming and could be a great offensive mind and he wants to run a completely different system. This is somebody who's been around, who has been a play caller, who has been a decision maker at the highest level, that he should know how to handle this. He should know how to properly make this adjustment. And the second part here, we're in the final weeks of the season. There's what, 3 weeks, 3 games left of the year. It's not like this change is happening at a spot where, one, the season's on the line. It's not like it's happening in the beginning or middle of the year where so much, not enough has happened or whatnot. If they finish strong, they transition to next year and he's the full-time offensive coordinator and you're technically getting a head start in figuring out what the future of your offense is while other teams are going to be hiring their OCs sometime in the winter and January or February. So from that perspective, I think this can work.
They have USC this week. Okay. And there's one thing that I do know about USC that's going unnoticed because they're losing is that their identity did change in this offseason. And the truth be told, they're a lot more physical than people are giving them credit for. And I think that they're going to continue to build a little bit here. I think you can't recruit the way that they're recruiting in some areas and not see that they're getting better defensively. So again, that's why I don't like the identity change too. So I know that they're playing USC. Listen, man, there's a big difference in going from a 3-point stance to a 2-point stance and having to do a lot of different things. Now, again, Joe, I get what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out in this game this week versus USC. Joe, 2 things that we need to get to here before we get rolling. Happy Veterans Day to all the veterans out there. Thank you to all that served in the military. And some did pay the ultimate price, and some of you almost laid your life down for that ultimate sacrifice. So thank you to all of our veterans out there. But we do have some sad news here. Mm-hmm. Speaking of USC, their former head coach, John Robinson, has passed away at the age of 89 in Baton Rouge with pneumonia. So to the Robinson family, who I do know, I'm very, very sorry for your loss. It's a very, very sad day. But thank you to all the veterans, and I just wanted to send our condolences to the Robinson family. All right, let's get rolling. When we come back, we talk Georgia, Tennessee next. Let's talk about our good friends over at betonline.ag. Stay with us. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way for you to wager on all of your favorite sports, contests, events with the first-to-market odds and lines. Find reviews for all the news for each league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, college sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all of your sports information for live in-game betting, props, and futures. Head on over to BetOnline today and use your mobile device to join and make your first sports bet. Use our promo code BELIEVE50, that's BELIEVE50, BLEAV 50, to receive your 50% off welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's betonline.ag, betonline.ag. All right. Let's get rolling here. Joe, we got a big matchup in the SEC this week, Georgia and Tennessee. Tennessee coming off a pretty convincing win last week. I know it's not without its obstacles, with Nico getting a little banged up. Heupel said that it was very much more precautionary than anything. Georgia coming off the loss to Ole Miss, and what was a little bit of a dominating fashion for Ole Miss. This is a playoff eliminator for Georgia. And so it's not necessarily for Tennessee, but it certainly is a playoff eliminator for Georgia. How do you see this one going?
Also, to bring up with the injuries, Dylan Sampson also went down with an injury. I think that there is a hope and an expectation that he's going to be available and playing, but we both know a banged up Nico without Dylan Sampson is going to be extremely detrimental for that offense. Like, that is something that needs to be closely monitored throughout this week. We're taping this on a Monday, so things certainly can change. Where my lean is at the current moment, there's a lot of things to unpack. Before we unpack that, my lean is on Georgia. Georgia's at home. They're coming off of an embarrassing loss. I really thought that they were going to go on this amazing trajectory after the loss to Alabama, and the way that that was a sobering moment for them. But apparently that wasn't the case. But Kirby's still a great head coach, and he's not going to allow back-to-back bad performances, and more importantly, with the season on the line, for them to drop the game. Where I do have concern, and where Tennessee can win this football game, is that their defense is extremely dominant, and I'm sure that we're going to expound upon that, but they need to play their best game blocking, because they're stepping into another situation where they're facing an elite defensive line.
Joe, I hate to do this, but I got to go here. Georgia might be very fraudulent from our expectations of what they should be because of what we just saw from that offensive line. Okay. Now, I sent you the clip of the All-22 copy of a running play where Jared Ivey beats Tate Ratledge, but it's not just Tate Ratledge, Joe. All 4 defensive linemen won a rep against the run, and the Georgia running back is just sitting there like, what is going on? He's got 4 defensive linemen running right at him. Joe, they have a problem at their offensive line. And this is not a game that you find yourself. This is not a game that you want against a team like Tennessee, where you're coming off a very physical football game. Now, you're right on one thing. Kirby can get some things fixed after coming off a performance that you just had against Ole Miss. The problem is that I don't know how talented they are. And I don't care what you do when you're getting beat. And listen, that Ole Miss may be the best defensive line in the country. They lead in sacks, tackles for loss. I mean, they're insane defensively. So it's not like I don't think Tennessee is that. But, man, have they been very good this year. Joe, they can't run the football. They can't protect Carson Beck. If you show and have shown teams that have shown that they can get after the quarterback from the edge, both tackles have had an issue this year. And that is where Tennessee 1,000% can get wins. Joe, I don't know about this. I know
that's why I'm not very confident. It's a lean for me. Like, I'm like, really, I don't know if I feel great about even saying that Georgia's that I feel like Georgia wins. Cause like everything you're just saying it's all very important points.
Well, again, regardless if they're going to play or not going to play, the simple fact that you have a quarterback in Tennessee and your best running back, I'm just going to call him your best player in Dylan Sampson. Mm-hmm. Both of them are not going to be 100%, regardless of what happens. Okay? So we're going to have, no matter what happens, if they play, they don't play, they are not going to be 100%. Nobody this time of the year is 100% anyway. But, Joe, Georgia can't run the football. And I know that Carson Beck's going to give me a turnover. And, man, with this Tennessee defense, he might give me two. So you know what, Joe, I have no idea how to predict this game if I'm being real with you. Because I don't think that Georgia, if you're physical with them offensively, that they can do anything. What are we seeing from Alabama? Like Blake, they did it in the second half against Bama. Joe, you had a fraudulent LSU run game that ran on Bama. Okay? Mm-hmm. That Bama front seven is not who we think that they are. So Tennessee, 1,000% can find a way to not only win this game, Joe, but dominate in some areas.
I think that there's two realities where this game could pan out. One is Georgia regains some energy. Their defense plays really well. Their secondary makes the plays necessary. They pick off Nico once or twice. And their defense wins the football game just like they did against Texas. Mm-hmm. Because, frankly, what killed them is that Jackson Dart, who's super experienced and has been around the block for a million snaps, and Lane Kiffin had his best game called as a play caller. Right, they were in their bag. That was what led to the exposure of some of the weaknesses for that secondary that was particularly pretty stout coming into that game. You're going up against Nico, who has been turnover prone, and we watched what they did to Quinn Ewers. That's one way this game plays out. The other is to what you've basically described, is that maybe their offense is a little slow to get going because Nico's banged up and Dylan Sampson's also a little bit banged up. I think that if they win, it's going to be very similar to the performance that they had against Alabama, where the first half is super close. Both teams are making mistakes. Maybe both Nico and Carson Beck have turnovers, but eventually they break free in the second half and their front seven just ends up getting home. They are fourth in havoc rate and they're third in adjusted EPA per play on defense. So that means that they are not only are they not allowing much production per play, they're also getting home for tackles for losses and sacks as one of the best groups in the country. Omar Norman Lott and James Pierce Jr. could completely go off in this game, and it is something to pay close attention to, how early on they're getting penetration, because it could end up getting worse and worse as the game goes on.
Two things I want to expound on by what you just said. I want to go to the first thing you said. Okay. I think that I would bet the under in this one. Let's just bet the under, because I like you said, I don't trust Carson Beck, but I don't know the status of Nico. Here's the truth about Georgia defensively. Are you ready? Mm-hmm. They're a really good football team because of their defense. Joe, they're 13th in the country in total defense. That's got to be adjusted. And you talked about EPA per play. I would assume they would be around third if, number one, Carson Beck wasn't turning the ball over. But, Joe, could you imagine if they had any form of run game? Because it's a
great point.
So everybody keeps telling me that this Georgia defense, it's not like the old. It's not like the old. Oh, they gave up a first down. Oh, they gave up 28 points. Well, they gave up 28 points last week simply due to the fact that their offense could barely get past the 50 in moments. Like, let's be real. I mean, they basically gave them their only touchdown of the day by getting the turnover early in the game. Like, what are we talking about? Georgia defensively is still, Joe, very stout. But something's got to change with them offensively. Personnel-wise, you can't fix it. Unless you're going to take some guys in or take some guys out and put some other guys in, you're not going to fix that. And, Joe, quite honestly, I tweeted this out today in preparation for this. I don't know if anybody saw it on Twitter. If you would have told me coming into the season that Georgia, LSU, and Florida State would be in the 100s in running and rushing the football, I would have laughed square in your face. And that's exactly where Georgia is. Joe, they're 104th in the country in run offense. So that Georgia defense is going to keep them in the game. Tennessee has their own problems on offense. Mainly, they can't get the ball down the field unless it's teams like Mississippi State or NC State. Joe, I don't have a pick for you. I have no idea who to lean or what to lean here.
By the way, the over-under is 48.5 on BetOnline for anybody.
Take the
under. Yeah, I'd take the under there too. But this is going to be a defensive game. The winner of this game is going to be who?
So basically, it would have. They're saying it's a 25-24 matchup.
Yes. Yeah.
What's the spread? It was 9 when it opened. What is it right now?
Shit, I just had it. I just closed it.
I think it was. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was 9, but I could be wrong there.
It was a bit pretty big.
It was a pretty inflated number. So it's going to be probably around a touchdown game.
Yeah, wait, I just had it pulled up, and of course I closed it. BetOnline has the spread of this game at. Still can't find it. There we go. 8.5. So it's moving in the direction of.
I would take Tennessee in the points. I take Tennessee in the points because I need to see something from this team offensively. Yeah. Now, watch. You could be right. Somebody knows something or has seen something. Something's going on. I don't know. Maybe that's one of the players being out. I have no clue for Tennessee. But, man, Georgia scares me. I love Kirby. I think he's a great coach. But, Joe, I also think – you know what? And I should have mentioned this yesterday, but I didn't. Joe, can I tell you something? We talk about culture all the time. Did you see the photos of Carson Beck, like, grinning on the sidelines? I saw it during
that's pissed me off. And for anyone who wants to downplay that's ridiculous. You can't be freaking – I don't care how kids deal with shit in games. You can't be smiling. You're not a kicker or a punter or some shit. You're the starting quarterback.
Kirby comes out today and says that the guy that was – cheering with people, the viral video. He said, well, that guy's an idiot. And the first thing that I thought, I was like, okay, so you're going to call that player an idiot. He hadn't seen his friends in a long time. Like, what's going on, whatever. Okay. But you have had many players arrested, and you're not calling them.
You haven't said anything. You haven't said anything about that stuff, and you're calling this kid an idiot because he was with his friends that he hadn't seen in a long time. Like, that I don't care about. I think that there was a lot of overreaction to that.
Yeah, a lot of overreaction. He saw his friends, whatever. It is what it is. All right. Let's get to Oregon and Wisconsin here. Joe, Oregon, the number 1 team in the land, takes on Wisconsin in a Big Ten matchup. I say that every time that we talk about Oregon because I still think it's crazy to say that they're in the Big Ten here. And not only that they lead it. Joe, looking into this game against Wisconsin, how do you see it playing out?
So at the beginning of the show, we pointed out potential upset opportunities for teams.
Don't you dare do it.
But this is not going to be one of them, Blake. Wisconsin, this team, offensively, the wheels are completely falling off the track. So much so, in this whole program, Jack Del Rio, we saw the news that he got arrested for the DUI today. He steps down from the program. I think that this Luke Fickell-led team has not played anywhere near up to expectation. I know that they dealt with an early injury to, oh my God, what's my guy's name? The quarterback that I don't like.
Tyler Van Dyke.
Tyler Van Dyke, the two double last name. I know that they're without him. Braden Locke has not been very good. 56% completion percentage, 8 touchdowns, 8 interceptions on the season. They can't move the ball. Their defense is making some nice plays. Their run defense is porous. It's terrible. They're allowing 164.6 rush yards per game. We know what Oregon can do running the football. We know what Jordan James can do when he is in a rhythm. I see this pretty early on as a game that could get pretty ugly if they start to establish things on the ground.
When is Oregon going to get tested again? And is it not until the Big Ten title game? I mean, I don't really know. No, I'm just meaning by anybody. Forget their schedule. I mean, like anybody that they play, there's nobody going to be on there.
Washington is their last game because they've got a bye coming up after this week.
Yeah, so again, they're not going to. And Oregon's going to want a little revenge in that game coming off a bye after what happened last year. Joe, there's one thing in this game that I'm going to be interested to see. That Wisconsin secondary has been very sticky. They're sixth in the country in pass defense. I know it's the Big Ten, but it's not like – look, man, Wisconsin gave Bama problems. Like they gave Ryan Williams some problems in the beginning of that game, and then Van Dyke went down and then kind of got blown out, but they're still sixth. It's not like that they have not been sticky at times. You're right. Their run defense is very porous. I just don't know of an avenue, okay, that an Oregon media, me saying that about Wisconsin, don't clip us again. Just throwing that out there. I don't see an area or a path. I don't think that they can outcoach this team. I don't think that they can outplay this team, meaning Wisconsin to Oregon. I don't know the avenue or path that they can win this game. And this makes it a classic week for an upset. A classic time for being.
Don't.
No, I'm just saying it is. I'm not saying that, like you said earlier, that's not going to happen here. I just don't know where they can attack. The only thing that I could think is that Gabriel has an off day. This offense has an off day. They turn the ball over some, maybe. But, man, this Wisconsin team, they can't move the football. I know defensively they've been fine, and they have been fine. Their run defense has been leaky, but, Joe, their secondary has been really good. They just can't move the football, and it's unfortunate for them. I do think that they play hard, and they're a scrappy bunch now. But like you said, man, I think Oregon's going to run all over them, and it could get bad here.
Right, but it does need to be given like a little bit of credit here for Wisconsin for some of the games that they've had where, I mean, they've played pretty dominantly against the back end of the Big Ten. That Iowa game has really sunk them, it feels like, because they had that stretch where they kicked the crap out of Purdue, Rutgers, and Northwestern, and everybody was starting to say going into the Penn State game, hey, maybe they pull out an upset. And they played good with Penn State for the first half, and then eventually Prabula started to cook and pulled away, and then Iowa again, they got their asses kicked. That Iowa performance, I think, is going to be indicative of what we're going to see from this Oregon team on the ground. They allowed Caleb Johnson to rush for 135. I watched the tape of that game. Caleb Johnson went off, and he had a really easy time finding rushing lanes in a very old school rushing approach where you know that he's getting the football. There is a lot of diverse ways.
They're not trying to hide it either.
Right. There's a lot of diverse ways that you're going to be able to attack this defense for Oregon. And I think that they're going to be able to produce pretty steadily. Their secondary, you mentioned, actually has been pretty good. They're only allowing 158 passing yards per game. But part of me thinks that that's an inflated number because of who they've played against. Because, like, again, I just mentioned there, they went against Rutgers, who doesn't throw the ball. They went against Northwestern, who doesn't throw the ball. They went against Iowa, who we know for damn sure doesn't throw the ball. So maybe they'll have an easier time than some people would project if they're just looking at that number casually.
That's very fair. That can happen. I just, in my mind, though, and I know it's Jalen Milroe, whatever, when they gave them, like, you got to go back and watch that film.
It was like a quarter, though. I did watch that film. I broke that down because Jalen Milroe cooked the shit out of them.
Well, and I get that, but Joe, they were getting their asses whooped because in the first half, didn't they have like 4, 5, 6 straight 3-and-outs? Like, it was bad. Like, they were on the field a lot until Alabama was like, all right, we're just going to run the ball, we'll play a little defense, whatever. And they got out of there. I mean, I get what you're saying. That wide receiver core and Dylan Gabriel, though, again, Joe, he's in my Heisman conversation. I don't know why he's not getting more Heisman love. It's not going to be the week, though, for Oregon, man. It just really, really, really isn't going to be the week, at least I don't think, for them. Joe, I will throw this out there, though. if there is a chink in the Oregon armor, third down defense maybe a little.
Why? What's their third down percentage allowed? I don't know off the top of my head.
Well, it's not a bad percentage. They're 30th in the country in third down defense. If a guy can run on them a little, which I don't think can happen here, kind of hadn't been able to stop it a little.
Yeah, I'm not. I see. That's the thing that I always keep coming back to with Oregon is I feel like we have to nitpick to find.
You're really
problems with them.
nitpicking to find areas of where they're not the best team in the country. I'm trying to find news here. You know why? Because if we come out here and say a team gets blown out, okay, or a team's going to get blown out, you come in here and say when that team loses, oh, see, these guys don't know anything, and you go back to old videos.
Right. But to what we're saying here, they're incredibly balanced. They are super, super balanced for everything that we keep bringing this up on a week-to-week basis. The balance shows up in their success. They're not going to get challenged in the Big Ten championship game. They're not, which isn't a bad thing. I mean, it's a good thing that you can finish the year undefeated. They're probably going to be the only team that finishes the year undefeated unless something crazy happens with that Washington game.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. All right, let's move on to Colorado, Utah.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Joe, big game in the Big 12 this week as Colorado's making a lot of steam. Now 7-2, squarely in the mix of this Big 12 title game here and potentially making a playoff. This week they go up against Utah, who almost gave BYU a scare, or did give BYU a scare, but they weren't able to hold on there. Let me say this, because we didn't get the chance to talk about the Utah BYU stuff from Saturday. Joe, I do think they got hosed. I got to throw it out there. I do think Utah got hosed there. That should not be a holding call there at the end. Mm-hmm. I love that their AD came out and said, listen, man, like, what are we doing? But in reference to Colorado, this is a different type of team. This is a different type of athlete that you're going up against this week. Joe, when you look at Utah and Colorado, how you see this game going?
Yeah, you mentioned the big part here. It's the athleticism. I don't think Utah has been tested this way with a team that's 4 deep at receiver that we know that they can produce, to Travis Hunter, to Wester, to Shepard, to Horn. There's so many different options that they've been able to turn to and produce success. In Utah right now, their defense is not playing to the expectation that we once thought that they were going to be at. They're on the field a lot because Isaac Wilson has been very inconsistent. Actually, he's been consistently mediocre. 55% completion percentage, only 1,200 yards passing, 8 touchdowns, 8 interceptions on the year. He has not, and he's a young player. He is a player that is being thrown into a situation that is very difficult to succeed in because he is very green to the college game. I think, first of all, Colorado's going to have an easy time getting after Isaac Wilson. I think that knowing and them giving up 17 sacks on this year, that we are going to see that Colorado defense that is 29 themselves with what they have produced with Greenhill and BJ Green and Oakland Lola. They get after opposing quarterbacks. So a young guy like Wilson, this is going to be a hellish experience.
You're right. I do think, because I just don't think they can score enough, right? Like, right. BYU has done a lot of really good things. Being prolific on offense has not been one of them. And when I look at Colorado, it's just a different type of dude they got dudes, man. I mean, Travis Hunter, because he rotates in and out, he's not an every down guy, but he had 9 catches, 99 yards last week, and I think a score. I mean, again, this is the issues that Colorado bring up with you. Joe, when you have that type of speed, when you have that type of quarterback, you can do miraculous things. I'm not with you on one thing. I think Utah defensively, it's a lot like Georgia in a way. Because they've been so bad offensively, this defense, they're on the field a lot.
Right.
They're still 14th in the country in total defense. They still have been able to be very good in their secondary. Joe, they're 18th in the country in passing yards allowed. Run games, they've been a little bit leaky, but I don't know if Utah has the quality depth for how much that they've been on the field. And once they got some guys a little bit healthier, Joe, you saw what they did to BYU. Here's what I'm going to say about this game, though. Joe, they're first in the country in third down defense, meaning Utah. They will scheme you up. So I know a lot of people are out on Utah. Offensively, they can't do anything. You're right. You're 1,000% right. But, man, Joe, Colorado still cannot run the football. And if you're asking Shedeur to drop back that much, okay, this is still a decent secondary. Now, this isn't a poo-poo secondary that you're going up against. He's going to get his yards. He's going to get his touchdowns. But, again, man, everybody wants to poo-poo, oh, Blake, well, you're – like last night we talked about Colorado. Oh, Blake's just finding something on to hate about. No, you're not. Not only are you not running the football, you can't run the football. And Utah is still a very, very physical football team. And, Joe, it doesn't matter who the team is. When a physical team goes up against a more finesse offense, they can get after you too now. Let's not act like this isn't a possibility.
So, to what you're saying, yes, you're 100% right here. Like,
one last thing, though. One last thing. Just a point. Okay. I just don't think Utah can score enough, though. So, even with some of the deficiencies that I think Colorado does have, they can't score enough with them. So I kick it back over to you.
Right. One, Utah has the bones of what was a competitive team, so they're still going to put up a fight. They put up a fight against BYU. That was one of their biggest rivals, so there's certainly going to be a little bit more of a visceral intent to try and stay close with them. They were also at home, so that was a big advantage for them. So what you're saying, yeah, they can keep this game competitive, more competitive than people realize. Utah is not as good or is better than their record indicates. They've dealt with a lot of injuries, and their offense has not been able to produce as a result. They can't finish in the red zone. So many issues have stockpiled for them to the point where their offensive coordinator stepped away. Andy Ludwig, who was considered for a number of big jobs over the past 5 years to take over as an OC, he stepped away from this Utah program because of whatever is going on behind the scenes. It's fair to bring up that Colorado needs to run the ball better. No team, and I've seen plenty of comments from this, guys, Colorado fans that say that we think that we're complaining about the run game. No team can succeed fully if they can't run the football in certain areas. You can win games the way that you are by out-athleting people and by producing these big plays, but to your point, Blake, there could be a spot later on in the season if they get to the playoff, if they get to the Big 12 championship game, where they need to convert in short areas, or they need to run out the clock and they need to rely on their running backs.
That's exactly what happened to them last week against Texas Tech. They tried to run the ball. They couldn't run the ball to close that game out.
And Miami's the example of that as well, where they just said, you know what, we're going to see if we can just keep scoring, and that's how we're going to build our leads. And the times that they couldn't run the ball against Georgia Tech, who was more physical than them and did not have a nearly as good of a record, they stepped up and fought.
God, that's such a great point.
Well, with saying all that, Colorado fans, we're not crapping on you guys. You guys are going to beat Utah. You are a favored for a reason for all the momentum that you have. You're getting Utah at home. And again, Utah has been a mess this season. Even if they somehow find a way to slow down your offense, they don't have the juice. They're not like Georgia Tech in that Miami matchup where Haynes King and Philo and that running attack were able to completely take over and they were able to grind them out. They're not built like that. They're not built to win and succeed in the red zone, this Utah team.
Joe, I'm going to throw one thing your way, though. You're right. I just don't think Utah can outscore them. And I'm going to go with Colorado to win this one. There is another area that I think we need to focus on here a little bit. I think Utah can run the ball on them. So, again, I know that they can get after Isaac Wilson. I'm with you. This Colorado defensive front seven has been leaking in the running game. Now, they're saying, well, Taj, I saw comments last week or from yesterday, about last week. Oh, well, Taj Brooks didn't run until X, Y, and Z quarter. I don't care when he ran. I don't care if he had all 30 carries and all 130 yards in the fourth quarter. It doesn't matter to me when it happens. You had a 7-point game at the end of this one that you needed a turnover to separate. I'm glad that you were able to get that. That's what great teams do. Defenses make a turnover, they score, ball game. Don't tell me that you brought up a point about We have been talking about Miami. Joe, when finesse offenses, when finesse teams play more physical teams, it will show very early. How does Colorado match that physicality is going to be a big question here. But I am taking Colorado to win, and I think they just can't going to outscore Utah. Okay.
Yeah.
By the way, do you agree with that?
With what specifically?
I think they're going to run the ball on them. I think that they can line up and run the ball on them.
I don't totally agree with that because I think that this Colorado defensive line, I pointed this out when we were doing the breakdown yesterday. Taj Brooks started to produce in the third and fourth quarter because Colorado was using a lot of light boxes. Like there were a lot of 4-man boxes because I think they were expecting them to try and throw the ball to get back into the game and to retake the lead. And that's not what happened. They relied on Taj Brooks. Early on in the game, they were getting a ton of pressures. Like they were like really getting a lot of big stops at the line of scrimmage on Taj Brooks. Bernard's been great, and I'm a big fan of Bernard from Utah, but he's slowed down, and he is not like he's only got 3 touchdowns on the year after he had a really hot start. I think if
the Brandon Rose kid came in last week though and went off, and then Keithy got a carry for a touchdown. They're finding innovative ways to run the football now.
If Utah wants to keep this game in a position for them to pull out an upset, they will need to run the football. But I don't know if I've got faith in them to get the job done against this Colorado defensive line that's getting better every single week.
They are getting better. Look, Warren has been someone that's been on my personal show. I love what he's doing. Again, Utah last week had an interception. Joe, they had a touchdown by running the football. They 6 plays, 64 yards against a BYU team that's not bad defensively now. Okay, we don't. By the way, just throwing this out there, we have not broken down BYU at all this year, at all, and I nobody else has either. Nobody's breaking down their games.
They're overrated. That's why I'm not breaking down BYU games.
Overrated or not, they're 9-0 and they're 9th in the country.
They also don't play anyone.
We cannot deserve to be the guys, by the way, that finally look at BYU at the Big 12 title game, or we look at them more religiously when they make a playoff. We can't do that. I'm not doing that. I'm not getting caught with my pants down.
I'm paying attention to them, Blake, but like again, they're
all right.
Look, we the basis of the show is previewing the biggest matchups that people are talking about. They have had a comically easy schedule, and I know that when they played SMU and they played them, no one knew that either of those teams were going to be good. And when they beat Kansas State, nobody knew that BYU was going to go on to be what they were. So like we're not justified for not talking about them. I still think that this BYU team is going to crap their pants at some point, whether that's Arizona State or Kansas this upcoming week.
I'm not with you on the schedule thing. I mean, Colorado's playing the same exact schedule, damn near.
Colorado played Nebraska, which was a challenging game.
Okay, take that one out.
They played Kansas State, and we knew that was going to be a premier matchup.
Well, you know what the big one is here for BYU? You ready?
Uh-huh.
The only loss that SMU has is to BYU.
I know, but this is what I pointed out last week when we did our bracket breakdown, which we're going to do again tomorrow. Like they're propping each other up. Like they're keeping each other up on a single leg.
And
it
Joe,
just
right now,
baseless.
Right now, they have a win on the front runner in the ACC.
But again, like how the ACC is not that strong, and again, SMU themselves have not really beat anybody.
Y'all wanted this playoff.
You beat an overrated Pitt team that lost to UVA. Like this, it really starts to crumble.
Who?
Like
who?
SMU did.
SMU has one loss, do they not?
Yeah, they beat a Pitt team that just lost to UVA.
Oh, okay. And their only loss is to the number 9 team in the country. I'm going to throw this back your way. You're saying all that. It's rich coming from a Notre Dame fan. It's very rich.
No. Because your
best one's A&M, and A&M is the 7th.
Louisville's also still ranked.
They're not the 7th team in the SEC, and they're not A&M. So you can't say that same thing about Notre Dame. And when I look at BYU and say, "Oh, their schedule's weak." So is Notre Dame's. Their only loss is to NIU, and I get
But
that.
both of us are smart enough to know that the talent level on Notre Dame's roster
How
is
do we know
heads
that?
above. Because I've watched the games.
No, you
BYU's
know that as a
scraping
fan.
out of these close
Nobody
games.
To my point, you know that because you're watching the game. So to my original point about BYU, if you're not watching the games, then you don't know. That needs to be its own segment in and of itself. Blake and Joe argue about playoffs. All right. Last one here. See, I needed to fill 5 minutes, and look how we did it. I can make an argument out of thin air. I've been married too long. It's a skill at
it's
this
just
point.
me and you. That's what it is.
No. When you're married, Joe, for almost coming up on a decade, by the way, if you're married as long as it's not this year, I think.
I don't remember. You better figure that out.
Yeah.
You better figure that out.
It's April the 6th. I just can't remember. It's 2018. So not
okay.
Yeah, 4 more years. Anyway, long story short, when you get married, you can figure out arguments. You can start them on a dime like that.
Okay, let's get to this game.
All right. Well, again, trying to fill some time here. Joe, last game we're going to talk about here, Texas and Arkansas. Hey, man, we talked about it's week 12 going to have some upsets. Texas and Arkansas this week. Your thoughts?
Look, I'm not going to go there on the upset possibility, and I know that Texas fans think that we hate them.
Don't say it's not a possibility.
All right, sure. I will say that it's on the table because Arkansas has done it before.
Yes, they beat Tennessee, so don't say it's not possible.
And they're getting Texas at home in an environment that is extremely underrated for how difficult it is to win there. However, actually, I'm not doing the however thing. I need to stop myself. That's not my bit.
Yeah, y'all keep taking my however.
But this Arkansas team defensively is a mess. Their offense that we have lauded and appreciated, Taylor Green and Jaquindon Jackson, who's been a bit banged up recently, they've been awesome. One of the best offenses in the country in just total yards per game, 25th in adjusted EPA per play. They're also one of the least stopped teams on third down situations. Like they are very, very successful at producing big plays. Their defense sucks. They're allowing 266 pass yards per game, 121 rush yards per game. And we saw what happened against Ole Miss, against a team that has premier athletes. We saw what happened. They couldn't keep up with them. There's a lot of similarities that could be had. And I would argue Texas's offense has better weapons at receiver and at tight end than Ole Miss does at the current moment with their injuries that they're dealing with. I don't have a lot of faith that Arkansas is going to be able to stop them. They beat Tennessee because they forced Tennessee to play their game, and Nico played poorly. Quinn plays like he did against Florida, man. This is going to be a splattering like it was against Florida.
So in week 10, Arkansas had a pretty embarrassing loss when they took on Ole Miss. They gave up 63 points, and that's what you're talking about. Their secondary was horrible. Jackson Dart in that game went completely off. He went 25 of 31 for 515 yards and 6 touchdowns. And you look at Watkins had 254. Lee had 127. Wright had 99. So you're right. The secondary for Arkansas is abysmal. It is completely and utterly abysmal. They have let teams absolutely nickel and dime them down the field. And then the teams start taking deep shots. LSU did it. Ole Miss did it. Why Tennessee didn't do it, I have no idea. Maybe they just didn't feel confident in Nico here. But they're coming off of a bye. And the last time they came off a bye and they played LSU, they got their shit kicked in. I wonder, and Joe, I equated to what happened with South Carolina the second time that they came off a bye week. You know, the first time South Carolina came off a bye week, Ole Miss just absolutely destroyed them. The second time they came off a bye week, A&M comes into town, and they really took it to Texas A&M. Not the same apples to oranges here when you're playing Texas. Not even close. Joe, I've seen this movie before. Arkansas, really, really tough opponent going into that place, and them keeping games close. Joe, it's a story as old as time with Arkansas. No, there's no logic in this. Zero logic. I've seen top 25 teams go into Fayetteville over and over and over again. And no matter how much they were mismatched, no matter how crazy the odds felt or seemed, and Joe, something miraculous happens. And you know what? When that mostly happened? Oh, when the offensive coordinator was at Arkansas and Bobby Petrino. I don't know how Arkansas is going to react coming out of a bye week in a rivalry game that gets renewed. This is a big-time rivalry game. You know, I talked to some Arkansas people in the media about a couple of weeks ago, and I'm like, listen, you have LSU, you have Ole Miss, you have Texas. And before I could even ask the question, they said we would go 1-2 if we could beat Texas. If we could just get one game and that one win be against Texas, we will love every single second of it. And I said, oh, okay, that's fine. What does Bobby P have in his bag? The only thing here, and why I don't think that they can pull this off, okay? Texas is going to absolutely abuse them through the air. It's going to happen. Sark is too good and too good of a play caller, and Quinn is too experienced not to get these talented dudes the ball in space. Joe, I don't want to look at this game and say in a rivalry game it's going to be a blowout. But, man, I think Texas is about to go off. And I think it's going to be a bombshell in that stadium because I think Quinn's going to throw the ball all over the place. But it's crazy because I've been critical of Quinn. But this secondary is so bad, man. If you're allowing them to turn you over, then there's a lot more bigger problems.
Right. You just hit on what's key here. That secondary has been very problematic, and it's been super leaky. The big game, the big win that they were riding off of that's kept Sam Pittman afloat as a coach, again, was the Tennessee game. And what produced that upset was they created pressure early on Nico that led to mistakes, and they were able to take over with Taylor Green as a runner. And Jaquindon Jackson also was able to produce in that game as well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that secondary is even anywhere close to equipped to stop Isaiah Bond and Golden and all of those guys. They are so freaking potent with that group when they're firing on all cylinders and they're in a flow. But to what you said at the very beginning here, before you jumped into finalizing our thoughts on why Texas wins the football game, you are right. This is more of a rivalry than I think the casual fan realizes. Like regionally, they're going to put everything on the line. We said this with the Tennessee game. When Sam Pittman was backed up against the wall and Bobby Petrino, they were backed up against the wall, what were they going to do? They're in that same spot against a team that they hate.
Yes, in a renewed rivalry. And look, that place, listen, again, Joe, I'm talking to him last week, talking to some Arkansas guys this week. Joe, you think the LSU game was big for them? You think the Tennessee game was big for them? This is it. This is the creme de la creme. This is the icing on top. We want this one. And look, man, for what it's worth, if you run the ball effectively, man, they can run the ball effectively. They have all year. It doesn't matter who's at running back. They can run the ball effectively. God bless. They're going to get their asses torn up in that secondary again. And it's just look, Sark is too good. He's too smart. So is Quinn. They're going to find open lanes, and it's going to be night-night, sweetheart. But that would make Arkansas 5-5 on the year. And, then they got
that's what I'm going to ask here is that, like, what is –
he's got to get to a bowl game.
Do you think Pittman's done enough to save himself? Like, do you think 6-6? So, who's their coming schedule?
I think they have Missouri.
They have
Missouri's in there somewhere.
Louisiana Tech, and they close out with Missouri. So, I mean, they could.
So they're going to get to bowl eligibility. So probably so.
Yeah, they could finish 7-5. They could beat Missouri, who seems like everybody's little brother that they're just kicking the crap out of this season.
What happens when Missouri gets healthy? It's my question.
It's not going to happen until next year. I mean, when the heck is Brady Cook coming back? They're going to have 3 losses, and they're going to be they're going to lose to South Carolina. They're going to be in the middle of the SEC.
Yeah, you're right. South Carolina's going to beat them. All right.
Yeah.
We'll see y'all again tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll do a college football reaction to the playoff rankings, and then we will break down some more games. Until tomorrow, we'll see y'all soon. Do we have any super chats, by the way, before we get out of here? We did. Brooklyn Boys says Colorado is averaging 17.5 points, negative 17.5 points this year. What does he mean by that? What does he mean by that?
Averaging. Does it mean they're covering by 17.5 points?
Maybe he is.
Appreciate the super chat, but I'm a little confused.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Let's see. Yeah, let's see. I think they're going to win too. I just don't. I don't feel comfortable. Anyway. See y'all then. Y'all have a good one. Peace.